This podcast is part of the Big Heads Media Podcast Network. Go to bigheadsmedia.com for more great podcasts.
And now, on with the show.
Hey everyone, welcome to
We're Watching Here. We're Watching Here.
This is Opinionated Movie Talk with Chris and Perry. My name is Chris Williams. With me, he is the Duncan, Idaho to my Paul. Perry Seibert.
All right. Okay. I can live with that. That's good.
I just love that Dune is this movie that has all these names like Duncan, Idaho, Chani, Leto Atreides. And then like the two main characters are Paul and Jessica.
Jessica. Yeah. You know, easier to remember in the long run.
Yeah. So we were going to originally start our Robert Altman series this week. I couldn't get around to MASH just yet, but also I think it's kind of nice to take a little palate cleanser between our 70s series and diving back into the 70s to talk about some new releases. And as we talked about on the last podcast, Perry, you've been going back to the movies recently quite a bit. I've been going back quite a bit too. So we're going to talk about two new releases, one which was out earlier this year, but I think is worth talking about. We're talking Dune, Pig, and The French Dispatch. I'm looking forward to getting into those, but Perry, first, what have you been watching that maybe I have not?
Well, I will go to the small screen, Chris, with a couple of some interesting family watches. So I think we've talked about this before. One of the streamers I don't do is Hulu. I don't have a Hulu account, but my wife and I found ourselves alone for a weekend at home, and we thought, well, we should probably find something to watch. And our tastes aren't totally divergent, but they're not similar. And so finding something that we both haven't seen that we're both interested in seeing is sometimes tricky. So when we started banding around possibilities, because my wife keeps a list of shows she wants to start watching, I went, oh, yeah, I would do that, but we don't get a Hulu. Let's take a look. All right, let's do the free 30 days. We're probably going to cancel it at the end of this month, but we have 2 episodes left and Only Murders in the Building.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Which my wife is enjoying tremendously. Uh-huh. I like it. I think it's very good. I'm happy to watch it. I will withhold judgment until those final 2 episodes. Okay. I would like to see what the big picture is before fully committing here. But other than this, I'm absolutely going to watch them and am interested. And when it's good, it's very good. And it reminds me that as likable as Martin Short is, really, he's a sketch actor. I can only take him in small doses. Martin Short's willingness to be humiliated is too much for me on occasion, comedically. So I as much as I love Martin Short, and I do, I much prefer him on SCTV and Saturday Night Live than in movies. And I think that's true across the board. Or if he is in a movie, that first Father of the Bride movie where he's just there for a little while.
Yep. I can see that. We actually, a few years ago, it was the night of my 20th high school reunion. We skipped it to go see Martin Short and Steve Martin perform live.
That was great.
Oh, yeah. It was fantastic. And yeah. I think that's how I feel about Martin Short too, though. Like, he would come out periodically and do a little song and vamp a little bit, and then he'd go back. And that was like the right amount of Martin Short. And
yeah, I don't want him to act in the way I use that word. He is not believable. And that you can use that. That's not inherently a bad thing. But I find the series way more interesting when dealing with Steve Martin's character's issues.
Yeah.
Amy Ryan is as good as it gets. You can't do better than Amy Ryan as an actor. And so she anchors a lot of that, and all of their stuff together is really wonderful and well played and beautifully done.
We are a little further than you back on that. I think are we 5 episodes in? I think we're 5 episodes in. It's one of those shows, we kind of had some other shows we had to get through first. if you haven't gotten around to What We Do in the Shadows, the TV show.
That is on Deanne's list, and we will get to it. Yes.
It is fantastic, and we've been finishing that up. But I really like Only Murders in the Building. I have to admit that when I saw that Steve Martin and Martin Short were going to do a TV show, I kind of assumed it would just be this frivolous, silly thing, because their stage show is very old-fashioned and very, old-time showy. And I thought that would be the tone of this. And I was surprised how there's a little bit of emotion to this that I didn't really expect going in. It's very stylistic. I'm not the world's biggest Selena Gomez fan, and I don't think this is totally changing that for me. But I don't totally dislike her. There's just something about her line readings that
I will say this. So she is of the perfect age where she was one of the Disney stars when my kids were heavy Disney Channel watchers. And she is the only one of that era who, to me, even at the time, wasn't a robot. Like, I thought at least she's got there's a life in those eyes. Because there isn't in Demi Lovato, Hannah Montana, any of them. They're awful. They're across the terrible performers. We'll get into that later with Dune. But I really liked. She was the only one who was like, all right, she might actually have a career. She seems like she actually has a life outside of this and knows something and doesn't just want to be this. Not that dating Bieber for a while helped that image. But she seems to put that behind her and is doing some really smart choices now. And I enjoy her on the show. She's fun. She's not a world beater, but she's good. And she's very funny with them.
She holds her own with them. Yes. And there is something that it's funny that you mentioned she's not robotic. That is something about her line readings, which to me always, and I'm assuming that's a choice. I don't know if I've seen her in anything else now that I think about it.
It's quite possible you have not. Yeah.
But I mean, just having Steve Martin back on the screen makes me happy. He hasn't been anything in years. I'm always happy for Steve Martin to get work. Amy Ryan, Sting.
Sting is wonderful. Yes.
Glad we have Sting. Glad Nathan Lane shows up in a very kind of restrained role. At least so far. I don't know if he comes back, but I'm glad you're watching this. That's a fun show. I enjoy that, and I'm looking forward to finishing that in the coming weeks.
How about you? What have you been watching, Chris?
Well, I think I mentioned last month I was going through a bunch of Halloween stuff. So I did finish that up. You can read all about it at my newsletter that I'm sure I will pimp at the end of this podcast. But spoiler alert, I did see the Dead Zone, which I loved.
Good.
And wrote that up.
So good.
Did some other slasher movies, was not as much of a fan of some of those. But on Halloween night, my son, he's been bothering me to watch something really scary. And he's 9, so that actually is kind of a tough order.
Yes.
Not because there's nothing that will scare him, but the things that would scare him would turn him off scary movies. Like if you do that wrong. So I try to gravitate towards things that are maybe a little sillier or a little more adventurous. This year I was going to do The Mummy, the 1999 Mummy, because I'm like, he likes Raiders of the Lost Ark. There's some gross stuff in this. Maybe he'll like that. But then he reminded me that last year we had done Gremlins, and he loved Gremlins. So he found...
All right. He can handle a scare then.
He can. But he reminded me that there's a Gremlins 2. And he started asking. But his thing was, I want to be really scared. Let's watch Gremlins 2. And I know in my head, if we watch Gremlins 2, that is pure Looney Tunes. But I decided to do it anyway because I kind of wanted to see Gremlins 2 again. And I think I thought that was about the line of what he would dig. Like, there's enough monster stuff, but it's very silly. Before watching it late at night, he's going to be okay. And did that movie play like gangbusters with him? He was totally on board. He was cackling the entire thing. It had been about, probably 20 years since I've seen it. It had been a long time. But I knew enough, like you've seen the Key and Peele sketch, I'm sure, where they talk about it, and they talk about how ridiculous it is that there's all these different gremlins. I had forgotten that sketch does not even scratch the surface of how bonkers this movie is. Especially if you've watched Gremlins in the recent past, which plays things kind of down the middle. Like, it's silly, but it's got some scary stuff. It's got, some serious emotion in there. It's very much tapping into a Christmas vibe. And this just feels like it's Joe Dante, like, giving a middle finger to the entire thing. And I adore that. It is so silly and funny. It's like watching a Zucker Brothers movie back when they were good. It's a joke a minute. It's a better Looney Tunes movie than the Looney Tunes movie that Joe Dante actually went on to make.
Yes. Agreed.
It's just so silly. It's just scene after scene of riffing on other movies, finding what absurd thing they can toss a gremlin into. And I want to say it like stops short of having like Tweety Bird sound effects and stuff, but it doesn't. They're in there. So it's just such a weird movie and so much fun. I loved it. I think I like it better than the first one, actually.
It's an easier film to like. I respect the heck out of the first one. I actually think it's a really good movie.
Oh, I did Gremlins,
and it's Joe Dante walks a very, very, very careful line and doesn't always stay on it, but allows himself to go over that line with Gremlins 2, and it's a lot of fun.
It is. Yeah, I just had a great time with that one. I followed it up with Nightmare on Elm Street 3, and it's a Nightmare on Elm Street 3. I don't even need to say anything more.
Oh,
it's fine.
Dream Warriors?
It's fine.
Come on, it's the second best of the Nightmare movies.
Yes, it is.
It's the only other good one.
I am partial to New Nightmare. I do like New Nightmare.
I've seen that forever. I should revisit that one.
That one's a decent one.
Okay.
But no, I liked it, but it was also, I think, I don't know. Freddy might not be my thing. I dug it. It was fine, but I also forgot about it right after I was finished.
Oh yeah.
Which, by the way, is a nice segue for us to talk about Dune.
It is.
This is Denis Villeneuve's big screen adaptation, very big screen adaptation of the Frank Herbert novel. Was previously made into a movie by David Lynch in 1984. I have not read the novel. I have not seen the previous movie.
Oh, good. This is good. You're the person I want to talk to about this.
Yeah. And, okay, so let's start because everyone knows what Dune is. It's actually made a surprisingly good amount of money. It's been pretty successful. I will tell you that I walked into Dune kind of begrudgingly. Like, I was not going to go see it. And the reason why is because whenever anyone had talked to me about Dune, the big thing was, oh, they'll never make it into a movie. It is too impenetrable. It is too hard to follow. It's too complex. They'll never get it on the big screen. You won't understand a thing. There's so much going on. And it really made it sound like one of those really starchy sci-fi movies that I just have no interest in. Like a really just kind of leaden fantasy type thing. And I was very pleasantly surprised to find, I followed what was going on pretty well. I mean, it's a very, very detailed story and detailed world that they carry out, but the broad arcs are there. You can follow the story pretty well. And I had a decent time with this. I'm glad I saw it on a big screen. I don't know that it would have played for me on HBO. I think this is a movie that benefits from a big screen with theater kind of rattling sound, so you can see all the big spaceships, and the sense of scale in this is really cool. And it kind of covers up from the fact that there's not a ton of emotion to hang on to, and that the story is, it's a hero's journey story when you get down to it, and maybe for the first half,
or right when you skim across the top of it. Yes, it's nothing but that's all it is.
It's familiar, but it brought me to a new world. I thought the world was very tangible. I like spending time there. I like Dune. I have not thought about Dune since I saw it in theaters, but it's just definitely a great experience to see while it played.
So my question then is, as someone who comes into this cold, and I will give my backstory. I had many friends who adored the Dune books in that universe, so I knew a lot about it. I tried to read the books many years ago and got 30 pages into the first one and threw it across the room and never wanted to pick it up again. Herbert was a terrible writer who imagined this elaborate world, and that's what people love about it, is the world is detailed. and hard to do on film for that very reason. And I know the Lynch film, so I know this particular story and universe. I'm not going to say perfectly, but pretty well. I knew I would not be confused by the movie. What I couldn't tell, what I've enjoyed talking to people about is, if you truly knew nothing, does it make any sense? Because it did to me just fine. I gotta believe, I will say this, not to disagree with you that the intention is to see that on a big screen. Watching it at home with subtitles would be a help. I gotta believe, because there are a lot of names and a lot of things that you are gonna need for later that will land much better if you have read them and let them sink in that way. So my other question is then, so do you think it has not stuck with you? And again, that's not an insult, just to say you haven't thought about it, because it doesn't end?
Yes. I think that's what it is. Because when you're also bringing up watching it on a small screen, I kind of have gone back and forth where, yes, I'm glad I saw it on a big screen, because I think the way it works best is it's a sensory experience. It is a big movie meant to be seen on a big canvas. That's how Villeneuve intended it. You know, he said it would be like racing a speedboat in a bathtub to watch it on HBO Max. But there's another part of me that thinks, well,
I wouldn't think that was fun.
I mean, I'd love to do it.
I would too.
Just as also a side note, in a interview earlier last year, I think Villeneuve confessed to watching Lawrence of Arabia on his iPhone. So he doesn't have much room to talk on that. But there is a part where I feel like maybe you wouldn't be missing something if you watched it on TV, because to me, it did feel like the pilot episode for a very expensive HBO series.
Yes.
Because it very much is not a complete story. Like, it just kind of ends, and it ends at a point that I thought made sense for Paul, the main character. Like,
agreed.
It would have been, it would have been an episode closer at that pilot. That's where you'd end the pilot. You can continue the story. But I do think it ends on a point where there's not a ton going on emotionally. It actually ends with a fight between characters we haven't, one of them we haven't met, and it's a lot more small scale than anything else that has happened in the film. And it hinges on him meeting characters who we've only kind of glimpsed in the Calvin Klein ad that's like stitched through the whole movie. And I wish we had seen.
That describes all of Villeneuve's look. Come on. And no director does more to be Ridley Scott in every way, good and bad, than that dude. There's a reason he got to make the Blade Runner. Okay. There's a reason he made Blade Runner 2046. It's just, yeah.
But I think that's why it hasn't stuck with me, is I never had that moment where I felt like, I know we're going to disagree on this movie series. So, but it's the best example I can give. I have never been able to get through the Lord of the Rings books. I've tried reading Tolkien. It's a lot of singing. It's a lot of walking. I've gotten about halfway through the Two Towers and just kind of gave up. And
yes,
I know he's got a lot of fans, and a lot of his fans are my friends, and I feel bad saying that, but I think there is a certain sense in which fantasy writing isn't always for me. It's just not my thing.
Yes.
I'm reading The Dark Tower right now. I really enjoy those, but I think there's a little bit more going on than that. The Lord of the Rings movies, I can remember almost to the day 20 years ago, sitting in a theater watching Fellowship of the Rings, getting to the end and being so pissed off when it ended, not because I was upset that I didn't like the movie. I was upset that I had to wait another year to find out what happened. Like, that's how invested I was in that story, in those characters, in that world. Like, I was all in from that. With Dune, it ended, and I'm like, yeah, okay, I'll see the next one. But I don't, I'm not sitting there on pins and needles wondering what happens to Paul. And
sure.
I think that's why it's kind of evaporated. And that might speak to whether the movie's good or bad, or maybe just the consequences of telling a story like that doesn't end, which I also think is probably part of its benefit, why I was able to follow it, because I could see if you crammed a whole giant story into this world, into one movie, it would probably be pretty incomprehensible, which I'm assuming the Lynch movie is. That's what I've heard.
The great story about the Lynch movie is he makes the movie They screen it. They realize nobody can understand what's going on. And so they basically force one of the actresses to record a bunch of explanatory voiceover stuff.
Okay.
And they thread that into the movie, and it made it less comprehensible to people. Like that's how bad it's not bad. Let's be really clear. Lynch's Dune, it fails. I say that as weakly as I possibly can, but it's fascinating, and you won't forget it.
Okay.
I remember Pauline Kael's review was David versus Goliath. That was the title of the review, because it was David Lynch taking on this massive work that is absolutely, yes, I'm sorry, some books absolutely are unfilmable. And I'm not saying that Dune is unfilmable. They filmed it. But they've had to shave and streamline a lot to get there.
Yeah.
And they would have to no matter what, because I don't even know if they get the second movie made, and I assume they would. I don't know why they wouldn't. This is going to make enough money where I'd assume that they would make sure the second one happened.
Oh, yeah, they greenlit it.
I don't know how much more they can or want to do. There are so many books. I don't know what the appetite for that is after this. So, I would actually encourage you to at least turn the Lynch one on.
Okay.
Check it out, because you'll know from the beginning, wow, you won't believe it's David Lynch. And then every once in a while you'll be like, oh yeah, okay, yeah. Oh yeah. Especially since it was only Lynch's third feature. He's coming off The Elephant Man, and after that goes to Blue Velvet, where because he learned from Dune what he did not want to do. He learned it well. So few good directors learn what they're supposed to from making a movie like that. Lynch did. Yes. This movie succeeds in every way that Lynch's film fails, but it's not nearly as interesting as the Lynch film.
Yeah, I think that might be the other thing. Like, I was watching it totally on board. I don't regret seeing it. I will see whatever they do for part 2. I think I was a little disappointed because I think everyone had painted this picture of, you've never seen anything like this. You've never, this story is something you haven't heard before. I'm like, I've seen this story before.
Yes.
I've been to these worlds before. Guess what? I've been to these worlds before, and the people were allowed to smile. No one in this movie, aside from Jason Momoa, cracks a smile in the entire thing. And I like Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings movies. I understand people can have their issues with them, and that's all fine. The characters had a sense of humor and warmth to them. I like the way that, I'm not going to defend the Hobbit movies at all, but the characters had warmth and a little bit of humanity, and this doesn't have a lot of that, which is a Villeneuve thing. He's he's Ridley Scott, not a fan of emotion. But I dug it. It made me think of what we said with No Time to Die, which is, you can get a lot of mileage out of actually going out and filming in a place that is not a parking lot. Because the settings in this, the sand planet and everything, looks amazing, and it's very tactile. This whole world looks lived in. I enjoyed that. I enjoyed the big sandworms, although I don't understand why they hardly showed them. I think everything they showed about the sandworms, I saw in the trailers. But it's good. I wish I had more Dave Bautista or Oscar Isaac.
You get a lot of that character in the Lynch movie.
Okay.
There's a lot more of the Harkonnens in the Lynch movie. And it's where not only do you get, the Baron, who is one of the great disgusting creations of Lynch's career, you get Sting in winged underwear. And really, what more could I say to make you want to watch Dune?
Wow. They should have just put him in that in Only Murders in the Building.
Exactly.
The one thing, something I thought I appreciated though too, was all the different, I don't know what the factions, the families. I appreciated that Villeneuve gave them a distinctive look.
Yes.
So that I could tell them apart. That was very helpful in guiding me through a lot of the impenetrable stuff. Was okay, well, this is the Space Witch. She looks like a Jedi, and she's some sort of Space Witch.
It's really easy. Is it a woman? Yes. Are their eyes blue? Yes, Fremen. Are they a woman? Yes. Are their eyes blue? No, Bene Gesserit. That's it. That's the only women that exist in this world.
If they look like they're kind of from Star Wars and Halo put together, they're the good guys. The bad guys look like maybe something from, I don't want to say Mad Max, but they're wearing black. They're bad.
If they look like Aquaman, good guy.
Yes. So, and if his name is Duncan Idaho, good guy. That's
and if they are Javier Bardem, pay attention. So happy that he showed up at the end. I had no idea that was coming. I was like, yes, if you're going to give me windy monologues, give me an actor who can deliver them. Oh, thank God for this. Yes, thank you, Javier Bardem. Come on along.
It did not sell me on the appeals of Timothy Chalamet.
I already find him appealing.
Okay,
so.
I don't know why he's not quite at Eddie Redmayne levels for me. Where Eddie Redmayne shows up and I'm just kind of like, okay, I'm done. Except for Trials of Chicago 7, which
that's the only good one.
But Timothy Chalamet,
he's good with My Week with Marilyn. I like that movie, and he's good. He gets to be overshadowed by everybody else, so he's very good.
But I think I always see him looking ready to burst into tears in every frame of Les Miserables, and when it
reasonable.
Like he's just gonna like cry over the entire audience the whole time. Timothy Chalamet, I don't know. I liked him in Call Me by Your Name, but here I don't know. He's not given much more to do that I haven't seen in other movies too, which is the problem. He's the chosen one.
He's the straight man. Yes, he's the straight man chosen one. Yes.
I've seen a lot of chosen one stories. Oscar Isaac, I will always show up for.
Absolutely. And yes, also very happy he's around for this. He makes this better.
So you watched this on HBO Max then, or did you?
I did. I didn't feel the need to. I like I said, I know this world already. I don't need the sensory experience. I've already experienced it the way I'd want to experience it on a big screen. I don't need to see it again in that capacity. I was just curious how he would tell the story, and it's fine. It's fine. As a lot of people I've talked to about it have been like, yeah, it's kind of boring, but you don't lose it. And I was like, yep, that's because Dune's kind of boring. The book is boring in sections, from what I understand. But then something pretty cool happens. So you hang around. And there's a lot of detail.
Yeah.
If you are into world building, this is a world you want to spend time in. If you care about how a story is told, I find those books impossible to deal with, but this might be more to your taste. This is a bit more streamlined.
Yeah. Yep. I think we said all we need to say on Dune. It's good.
I would say so.
Ish.
It's fine.
Yes.
People who like this sort of thing will find this to be the sort of thing they like. Yes.
I'm glad it seems to be finding an audience, because it is a step above, another comic book movie or something. It's something I haven't, even visually, it takes some chances. And I appreciate that. I appreciate that it feels a little bit more like sci-fi for grownups, sort of. Visually.
Oh, very much so.
Yeah.
I would say very much so.
And so I want more of that. I like a Marvel movie, but I like the chance this took. I'd like to see more like this. And
I like seeing the films that were delayed for a year and a half because of COVID do really well when they finally come out. That's good. So
yeah. And this had, I think, the best debut of any of the HBO Max movies in theaters. So
no shock. I'd still like to know exactly what the settlement was, that he was okay with this happening, because he was the one that sued them when they announced they were going to do this. I'm curious what cut he gets of what.
I think it was also, we'll do part 2. Don't worry.
Maybe.
They announced that last week. They've greenlit it. Part 2. And my hunch is they were always going to do it, but it got kind of free publicity to have a lot of fans crying out for part 2.
Sure.
That's Dune. There'll be a part 2. I'm sure we'll discuss it when it comes out. We're going to move on to a movie that won't get a part 2, which is a shame because it's a delight. This
is not screaming for a part 2.
It's not screaming for a part 2. It's not a franchise movie by any stretch of the imagination.
As much as you might think it's the hog version of Taken. There's no need for a Taken for a Pig 2. It's just
this is a movie that came out earlier this year, and you had mentioned you saw it a few months back, because I think I had offhand mentioned that I should probably see it. And I didn't see it even after you saw it. And then I was sitting around last week and I'm like, I need to start catching up on my 2021 movies. And that was sitting there in my Amazon queue, and I'm like, oh, I'll watch Pig. And I'm very, very, very happy I watched Pig, which, we'll just cut to the chase, might be in contention for my favorite movie of the year. This is a movie. It's weird. I am, when you think about the marketing for a movie, it shouldn't really come to play in your review. But I remember it being sold. The vibe I got was that it was Nick Wick, right? Like it's Nicolas Cage's pet pig gets stolen, and pardon the pun, he goes ham. And and if you had told me Nicolas Cage is starring in a movie where he kills a bunch of people who took his pig, I would not bat an eyelash, because that sounds like something Nicolas Cage would star in.
Absolutely.
Because he absolutely has a type of movie people associate him with. I think people also forget that Nicolas Cage can be called on to deliver some really solid, good performances, and I think Pig is among his best. So this is a story about a man living in a shack. He owns a truffle hunting pig. He sells the truffles to upscale Portland restaurant owners. Meth heads take his pig, and he goes to get it back. And that is where I will leave you with the plot, because from there, I think it turns into something that you don't necessarily expect.
Indeed.
Perry, what did you think of Pig?
Pig is surprise. I found this, yes, with that tagline, I was like, well, here's another Nick Cage film I don't have to pay any attention to. And then the reviews started coming out. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, when Nicolas Cage tries, he's still really good. And he just doesn't try that much anymore, really. I mean, I don't want to say he's lazy, but he doesn't challenge himself. And he's an actor who got bored, and I think is only doing things that he finds interesting. And what he finds interesting is not what I find interesting the vast majority of the time. So this is a film that sneaks up on you. You realize early on that this is not Taken with a pig. This is something else. This is a character study. This is a really quiet, intimate character study. And what is so surprising is that as it ladles on layers and layers of depth and meaning, that works. You just don't expect it to work that way, and it does. It's an art house film, which you don't expect for a variety of reasons. And I will tell you what it put me in mind of about halfway through is the last time I went, oh God, man, he can still do it. When he gives a shit and has a script, he can still do it. And that was David Gordon Green's Joe, a film nobody saw, that he is fabulous in. I mean, he's even better in that than he's in this, quite frankly. Because this is, for as enjoyable as this is, Cage gets, I think it's 4 really big speeches in this movie. Like, he doesn't talk, and then he gets 4 huge speeches.
He gets his silent Bob moments.
Yes, one of them is absolutely brilliant, and I do want to get into it a little bit later about that scene, because I think it's a really interesting thing to talk about metatextually with him. 2 of them are okay. That's just Cage being Cage, and one of them is really bad, just pointless, just like I think he thought it up that day on the set, and they were kind and let him film it. It didn't feel like it needed to be there. It served no purpose that I could see in the movie. And then Adam Arkin shows up to hammer home the emotional weight of the movie beautifully with a fantastic final sequence that really pays off in ways you are surprised by. Yeah, it's a great surprising movie. It's not going to be in my best of at the end of the year. I'm not going to go that far with it.
Ah, for shame.
But it's really good, and I'm really glad you saw it, and I hope more people see it.
Yeah, the thing is like I kept wanting to describe him as like a raw wound, Nicolas Cage in this, but he's not. He's like a numb wound, a numb nerve.
Very much so.
He is someone who has suffered loss. I mean, I think that's apparent early on in the movie.
Yes.
And he's kind of collapsed inward and found this but it's easy for people just to kind of play vacant and silent, but there's also this sense of acceptance that he's just kind of accepted this is what happened in life, and I'm just going to move on, not caring about things. And you can feel the weight of that. It's a movie about grief and
yes, very much so.
What we choose to do with that when we lose things. And I thought he was very powerful in that. There's a moment, I think it's the very last scene in the movie, the last frame of the movie, where something that was foreshadowed earlier finally clicked into place for me, where it's like, oh, that's why he did that. Oh, that's what this movie is about.
Yeah.
And I found myself very moved by that. It was getting a little dusty in the room. I think there is a relationship he builds with Alex Wolff's character, who plays his buyer.
His truffle guy.
Yeah. And
his middleman. Yeah.
And I think that's a very tender, warm relationship that develops between them that doesn't go where you expect it and leads to final, I don't even want to call it the climax of the movie, but it's the final big sequence of the movie, which reminded me of all movies for this to remind me of. It reminded me of Babette's Feast, one of my all-time favorite movies. And not just because there's food throughout this movie, but that is a movie about sacrifice and grace and things you've lost. And I did not expect the Nicolas Cage movie Pig to remind me of Babette's Feast, and I'm very thankful it did.
It is way closer to Big Night than you might expect.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Yeah. And I do think that so the speech that works is the one in the restaurant, right?
Yes,
to his former employee. I'm trying not to be too spoilery here.
Yes.
But let's just say that Nicolas Cage delivers this monologue to this very very of the moment popular chef that basically cuts him to his core, explaining, I know who you are. This is not who you are. You don't want to be doing this. And I am trying to figure out in my head if Cage, what his subtext for this is. If Cage thinks he's talking to himself, every other actor who's working now, or what? Because I flashed on Jon Favreau's Chef, which was a really interesting movie about Jon Favreau explaining that, okay, I used to make these really small movies, and then I made Iron Man and Iron Man 2 and Cowboys and Aliens, and now I'd like to make this really small movie again, and this is really what I love. And then he turned around and made another huge monstrous piece of crap, whatever it was. So it's like I don't know what you are now. I don't buy you either way now. I don't know what you want to be. I both of them seem fake to me now. And so I'm curious that that speech is the same. I'd love to direct that speech at Nicolas Cage and know what he would think and do.
Yeah.
But that said, that's not the only reason the speech is fascinating and really good. It is a really beautifully written monologue. And it's a showcase for Cage. He just gets to show off, and he's great at it. Mm-hmm. I'm not even, it is a showstopper in the best sense of the word. And it's worth seeing the movie just for that speech, quite frankly.
Well, it's interesting because there are parts of the movie that I don't want to spoil anything that call to mind Fight Club.
Oh, yes. There's an underground Fight Club in the movie. I don't think that's a spoiler.
Okay.
I think saying that is enough, because what it is so weird that that's not a spoiler.
Yeah. And yet this was the scene where it reminded, like, it's a version of a Tyler Durden speech that he's giving, sort of.
Yes.
Except, I buy it coming from him, and I think Tyler Durden, as we've talked about, is kind of full of shit, but...
Yes.
But yeah.
Go ahead.
No, and it is, like, there's a very powerful line, I think, in there that Cage sells, which is you don't have a lot of things to care about. Like, you're not given a lot of things to care about. And
yes.
And that's great. And I think in the movie that's powerful, for his character that's powerful. But you're right. I'm watching that going, you just did Willy's Wonderland. like you just did the movie where you fought animatronic bears.
Yes.
So I'm confused about that. I've always thought Nicolas Cage is sometimes in on the joke on some of his bad movies. I think he understands that they're not great. I don't think he always gets it. I think he definitely sleepwalks through some of the trash, but then every once in a while he'll come out and do something like this. And I love it when he does. The problem is predicting the ones in which he's going to do that.
Right. Yeah. I just wait now and let people tell me that this is the one I need to check out. And I'm glad I did.
It's also it's a very beautiful movie to look at.
Oh yeah, it's gorgeously made.
I don't think the director Michael Sarnowski has done anything before. I'm looking that up right now. He's done a lot of TV, but no, this is his first feature, and it's really a gorgeous movie. I think he tells it very well. I was tempted in the early scenes. I also did not know going into this that it actually took place in modern day. So
okay.
I was at first getting a First Cow vibe off this. I thought this was going to be like a Nicolas Cage's First Cow.
Yes.
And then the car shows up and I'm like, oh, it's modern day. But yeah, I liked this. I think First Cow, pig, lamb. I mean, we're getting all the barnyard animals in the Prestige movies.
We're getting back to nature.
Yeah.
We're going to connect with the earth again. Yes.
No, it's definitely worth seeing. I think it is. I think it knowingly subverts what you think it's going to be. I think it does have an idea of what people expect it to be and then goes in a different direction. I think it does it very well. Yeah.
And I don't think it even, I don't even want to say that. I don't think it does. Once you start watching it, it isn't really, it's never taken. It really isn't. I mean, it's just the setup. It's just the premise. In no way do you think it's going to be that movie, especially once you start watching it. And I was relieved by that.
I felt like, vague spoilers, going into the Fight Club sequence, my first thought was, oh, is this when it turns into John Wick?
Yes.
And then, but I think it kind of, I don't know if this was intentional, but I think there is a thing where you're thinking, this is a Nicolas Cage movie. Of course, this is going to be how weird it's going to get. And then it doesn't. In that scene, it proves out that, no, that's not the way it's going. He makes a choice in that scene that at that point, I'm like, oh, I don't know what this movie is now, but I'm really curious to see what it is.
Yeah. Once you realize when that scene's over what that scene was about, you're like, oh, we're doing this. Mm-hmm. Well, that's interesting. Let's keep watching this then. I'm fully invested. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. That is Pig. You can actually see it on most VOD platforms. I rented it. I can't remember how much I paid, but it's out there. Rent it. It's good to see. And now I think we're going to come to the big battle of the evening, which is Wes Anderson's The French Dispatch. I actually saw this 10 minutes after I got out of Last Night in Soho. I did a double feature. And I've got to say, it was very interesting to go to Last Night in Soho, which is a movie where a very stylistic director is taking some chances and doing something a bit new, and then go into a Wes Anderson movie where the only review I need is it's a Wes Anderson movie. Mm-hmm. If you like what he does, you are going to like The French Dispatch. If you are getting a little tired of Wes Anderson, this is not going to make you feel better. So I guess the question comes, where do we fall on Wes Anderson? And Perry, you posed a question on Facebook that I would like you to pose again, because I think it's a very interesting end to this.
Okay. To be fair, and I realized after I'd sent it and saw the first reaction, I was like, oh, I phrased it wrong. The internet is not the best place to ask this question. Because I truly do not mean it as snarky as it sounds. Mm-hmm. I meant this to be a kickoff for a conversation about much more than Wes Anderson. I just had it while watching this movie. Mm-hmm. And the simple question is it possible for an artist's style to become a prison? And all I mean by that with Wes especially, is that style is there are two things about it now that I find problematic. One is that it's so regimented, it's boring. I know what it's going to look like. It's not surprising. Unless I truly just sheerly enjoy the aesthetics of it, it's boring. And I don't always enjoy the sheer aesthetics of it. And especially when it repeats so endlessly as it does throughout this movie. The other problem I have with Wes specifically is, and we've talked about this before, I think he is at heart as an artist. I'm not talking about as a human. I don't mean in any way other than he's really immature. He's really adolescent and immature. And that's not a knock. I think he's only at his most interesting when he is willing to actually deal with real adult human pain. And when he's willing to go near that, I think he's way more interesting. That's why Tenenbaums is his best movie for me. And when he respects that and understands and allows for genuine adult regret, pain, and damage to enter the frame, which is why I hate the stuff with the kids in Moonrise Kingdom. I think the stuff with the adults is great. I really do. And I don't like the film on the whole, but I think the stuff with Frances McDormand and Bill Murray in that movie is spectacular.
Oh yeah.
And it's also why, wow, I've gone really long-winded on this.
No, you're good.
It's the other reason why I truly, and again, I don't say this to be mean. He should just work with stop motion animation. Those two films are spectacular because a little kid trying to reconnect with his dog is exactly the emotional tenor that Wes Anderson can deal with. That he can make that vibrant and real for me. He is that adolescent and that childlike, and not in a good way often. But when you direct that and you direct that kind of care into the visuals at a story that simple, with an emotional through line that pure, it really works for me. I love those two films. And this to me, after the whole film is laid out pretty much like an issue of the last issue of the French Dispatch, which is a New Yorker knockoff. This is the dedication at the end of the film is to the dozen people you most associate with the history of the New Yorker. It's once you get through the opening and Owen Wilson's characters travelogue through the town that they're located in, I'm like, I could leave now. I've gotten everything I'm going to get out of this. There's nothing left to do. And so then there's 3 short films after this. The first one's the best one by far. I think a lot of that has to do with bringing someone new into the Wes Anderson universe. Benicio del Toro is really wonderful and does what any good Wes Anderson actor should do, which is not much. Just play it. Yeah. Just play it the way it's written. He is a man he's an actor who's able to communicate genuine loss and pain just by looking at him. And that's why he's really good for Wes. And, I found the last half of the movie, boring. I was just bored. Didn't care about the stories. I got tired of looking at it because it was the same series of shots over and over and over. He's now just, not only is he bothering to build dioramas, he's now putting people in them and not letting them move. And that's going to be interesting if you are all in on the Wes Anderson aesthetic. I don't know why you just don't then keep working with clay. I don't understand what he gets out of working with actors anymore. And so I was left with, well, this is a trifle. And I can, as good as Wes Anderson's visuals are, they're just so consistent that they're not interesting to me anymore. He's got to put a good story around them. You bring up Edgar Wright before this. Edgar Wright can work in a variety of styles. I want a film to have a style. I want a director to be capable of many styles. And if you're not, you better find an interesting way to use your visuals each time out. And Wes Anderson, it doesn't all the time for me. That's where I am.
This is tied with Pig as the #1 movie of the year. No, I'm kidding.
And just the second story.
No, okay. The second story is
this. So let me guess here. This is also not the movie that won you over for Timothée Chalamet.
This is not the movie that won me over for Timothée Chalamet.
All right. Okay.
As much as I love Frances McDormand, that was the story that I feel like he was going for something. I don't know if he was going for a political piece there or something of loss of. I don't know what that story was really about. I didn't care for that one. I thought there was some really fun visual flourishes in that one, where he actually plays and turns at parts into a stage, like into a stage show almost, where the setting like pulls apart like you're on stage. I like his aesthetic. When I think of him, I think it often kept me at a remove from his work early on. And I think it does sometimes keep me from connecting emotionally in the minute because it's very artificial and I have a hard time like moving past that artifice to see like real people in that. But what I was surprised with was I left this pretty cool on it. And it's come back to me that there are parts of this movie I'm quite taken with. I was kind of being facetious when I said we'd be at it. Because Wes Anderson, and I'm going to ramble here, but Wes Anderson is someone who I have like historically had a hard time with. I remember watching Rushmore when I was like 18 and I hated it. I despised it when I first saw it.
Wow.
I mean, granted, I was like a freshman in college at that point, and I didn't know what he was doing, and like, why is everything so mannered and artificial? And I really responded negatively to that. And over time, he's kind of won me over because I like watching the characters play around in that, and I really like Tenenbaums, and I've gone back to Rushmore, and I really like Rushmore. But then there's stuff like Life Aquatic that just kind of bounces off me. I don't even think I saw Isle of Dogs.
Oh, it's great. Sorry, Isle of Dogs is great. As is Fox. I think
I
Fox
love Fantastic
Dogs
Mr.
are
Fox.
superb.
But his last two I really liked. I liked Moonrise Kingdom quite a bit. I was okay with the kid stuff. It made me laugh. I thought it was sweet. I think the adult stuff in it is by far the best stuff in the movie. I think Grand Budapest Hotel was my favorite movie the year it came out. And I thought it was the first time that he provided a reason for why he goes to the style he goes to. It is a movie about why someone would go to such great pains to make something so ornate. And I appreciate that. It was kind of like my movie that unlocked Wes Anderson for me.
That's good.
I think there's a little bit of that in The French Dispatch. This is like you said, it's on the surface an ode to journalists, but it's really an ode to artists, right? Because every story also has someone who does some form of art, whether it's a painter, it's a person who does makes a manifesto, it's a culinary artist. They all have some art form that they're doing to fill some sort of hole in their life. And I think this is Wes Anderson looking at that and examining maybe his reasons for doing it, even if he doesn't wrap his arms around it. There's a scene near the end of the third story that I think kind of wraps that around a little bit to why people keep throwing themselves at making these works of art. And they're trying to fill something. They're chasing some emotional thing. And I found that very moving. I thought he experimented a little bit here. I like these story structures. This is full of stories that delve into other stories. And there's an interview where they're telling a story and we flash and see that. And then there's a story within that. And I thought that was really intricate and clever. He does some things with color that I appreciated. He shows color at certain sequences when there's something affecting about a work of art or there's some piece of emotion coming in. I don't know that it all works, but I enjoyed this one.
Why the cartoon at the end?
Because it's Wes Anderson.
Right.
Okay. I will say visually, I love to sit and watch what he does. I am someone who loves watching that aesthetic. And I love the way he plays around with that. I love knowing I'm going in and getting those beautiful compositions where everything's symmetrical and it's just fun to watch. Where
everybody's right in the center of the frame. Everybody's kind of framed. We move exactly one full length of the screen over to something else that's locked in place. Yes. Yes. If you're into it, yes. I'm not knocking it in and of itself. I think it's obvious.
Where I have a harder time with what he does is with the dialogue. And it might come down to that immaturity thing you talk about, where his characters will talk in a very deadpan way and then slip in, I don't know, some sort of just idiotic statement or dumb joke or something. And you always know it's coming. Like you can see them coming a mile away. They'll just undercut it with like, oh, you didn't expect that character to curse. You didn't expect that character to say something that's stupid. And he does it a lot. And I don't find that funny. I find him visually very fun to watch. I think there are some very playful sequences, even just the opening establishing shot of the building where the French Dispatch is published, and you watch someone moving up and down through all the rooms, and it's fun to watch. And I don't know. I think the Benicio del Toro one has some really good visual comedy involving, the art put onto the prison walls and things like that.
It is the best of the three.
It is the best of three. I enjoyed the third one. I don't know why it went to the cartoon, but I had fun watching the cartoon. Part of me wonders if Wes Anderson just cannot film an action sequence because he'd have to move the camera a little bit. So he, animation's a way to do it. But I appreciated that story. I thought it was a fun story, and I thought it moved to I like Jeffrey Wright in that. I will like everything Jeffrey Wright does.
I am with you for the most part. Jeffrey Wright left unchecked will go off the rails. But yes, when Jeffrey Wright is invested, yes, he's excellent.
Yes, and he's kind of like James Baldwin in this, that very closely modeled after James Baldwin. Yeah. But I thought there were some moments of real pathos that he had and real drama. I don't think it all connects to anything. I don't think there's, I don't feel at the end that I'm moved by the magazine ceasing publication or anything like that. No. But I like the stories in there. I like that they feel okay. At the end of the day, what it did feel like is I sat down and I did leaf through the New Yorker, and I read some really interesting stories that made me laugh, and the sentences were composed so well. And maybe there's a little more attention given to the composition of the sentences than the actual story that's being told. But at the end of the day, I enjoyed the experience of reading it. I also would put down the issue of the New Yorker and not think about the issue of the New Yorker much again, except for a germ of a story that keeps getting back at me. I don't like it as much as Grand Budapest or something like that, but I did enjoy it, and I found certain moments have stuck with me. Images, and that's good. I'm glad I have Wes Anderson to do that. I think by now I've accepted Wes Anderson isn't gonna make his horror movie, or Wes Anderson's not gonna make his
Saturday Night Live took care of that for us.
Yes.
Remember, you can always watch that trailer.
Yeah, he's not gonna make. I don't think he's ever gonna make a big sweeping drama. He's gonna do his little thing.
He did Tannenbaums, and it's fantastic.
But he has his little corner he likes to play in. The question you asked, I've been thinking about it since you asked it on Facebook, actually.
Yeah.
Because I do think there are directors who they get into that style, and it does become suffocating. And like Tim Burton was the first one to come.
Yes, absolutely.
And when I think of that, I think of someone who, Tim Burton can maybe put together an interesting visual, but there's no soul in any Tim Burton movie anymore. I don't. Well, aside from Big Eyes, I like Big Eyes
and Ed Wood, and actually Edward Scissorhands.
Okay. I meant last 20 years.
He can. Yes. He can. Fair. He can. Mm-hmm. That's what's so distressing and infuriating about Burton is he just won't. Yeah. He doesn't try. He would rather just latch on to some well-known title and throw his imagery at it. It's lazy. And
when he does that, I don't feel him. There's not a playfulness about it. There's not any sense of exploration.
No.
It's just, here's that thing I do. Give me money, Disney. Whereas Wes Anderson, I do think he's pushing himself at least to take some visual, I don't want to say risks, but he's playing with the visuals. He's finding new corners of his little prison to play in. I still get the sense that he's exploring that. He's doing what he wants to do, but I think he's finding things that are interesting about that. I think it's very interesting that his first few films were very much concerned with exploring family relationships and things like that. Grand Budapest Hotel is very much about why would you spend all this time making something this intricate and ornate, and why it's about why someone does that. There's a lot of that in this movie too, which is why are we fascinated by people who create works of art? Why would you put all that time in putting something on a wall that is going to stay at a prison for they're searching for something. And I think that's something he's exploring that I don't know if he gets his arms around it, but I appreciate him searching for it.
Fair.
So I enjoyed the French Dispatch.
And if there were no Wes Anderson movies,
Mhm.
I might like this a lot more.
That's fair.
Truthfully, I have it through that lens.
Mhm.
I don't know how to judge. And knowing there are Wes Anderson films that I think are far more successful that exist, that I would point someone towards if you want to understand or get into this aesthetic. But yes, that's just how it's how I come to movies. We like what we like because of our prejudices, not despite of them.
Yep. So that is the French Dispatch, Dune, and Pig. Perry, do we have anything else to say about these three movies?
No, but other than it's a good triple feature.
It is.
Talk about you're just gonna wildly shift, just giant, neck brace, whiplash, go back and forth between these three movies. Fantastic.
It is if you think about it, Pig, Dune, and French Dispatch are kind of like a ham sandwich on French bread.
Nice.
That was not
Excellent.
sweaty at all.
And a lot of Chalamet. You'll spend a lot of time with Timothée Chalamet.
I'm sure I'll come around to him one day. But
I hope you would.
Okay, I'm being overly mean. I think it is one of those things.
He's very good in Lady Bird. He's very good in Little Women. I like him. I'm not saying he's a great actor. I'm not saying he's the next great thing, but he's got a fabulous look. I think he can act. I like his face. I mean that as an actor. I don't mean he's pretty to look at. I think he's interesting.
I think it's one of those things where it's just someone who it's like he was in 2 big movies within the space of a year, 2 or 3, because there was Little Women, Lady Bird, and those weren't the same year. Lady Bird and Little Women, because they're the same director. But a
couple years apart. But
yeah, I mean within that span of time, and then Call Me by Your Name. And I think it just was this total embrace of him. That something about that always, he's not that great. But I don't think I've ever disliked a role he's in. I think Dune might be the one where I was like, he's a little light for this role, but I also think it's a role I've seen many times before. So yeah, that's probably not his fault. I will keep giving Timothée Chalamet more tries. I can't say I will do that with Eddie Redmayne.
Well, that's because you didn't see, was it Ascending Jupiter, Descending Jupiter, whatever that piece of crap was.
No, but I've seen his scenes from it.
It's awful.
Where he whispers and yells.
The movie's terrible.
I have heard that.
He's awful in it. Oh my God, that's a terrible movie.
Wait, are you saying that the Wachowskis made a bad movie?
So many. They made so many bad movies. I'm that person who believes that the best movie they ever made was Bound. Okay.
I don't think I'd argue. Although I do like The Matrix a lot, but I didn't say it was the only good movie. So it was I did say it was their only good movie. Okay, yeah, that's an overstatement. It's their best movie. The Matrix is fine. Don't watch any of the sequels. Yes, don't watch the sequels for The Matrix. I'll go to bat for Speed Racer.
Speed Racer is an interesting exercise in style. Yes, I don't mind Speed Racer's existence.
But Cloud Atlas, that ain't that great, and that's the true.
Cloud Atlas is awful, and Descending Jupiter is even worse. As is that third Matrix movie. That's a giant. So is the second Matrix movie. Those sequels suck.
Well, let's see what happens next month with the fourth Matrix movie.
Yeah, I'll be sitting down in front of HBO Max for that too. Yeah.
Well, it's Christmas weekend, so I will definitely be watching that one on HBO Max. All right, Perry, before we go, where can people find you?
You can find me on Facebook. You can hear me every Friday on WLBY in Ann Arbor on the Lucy Ann Lance Show. I am Perry Loves Film on Twitter. Chris, where can we find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Mere Christianity. I think you'll be able to listen to the Seeing and Believing podcast in the next week or so. I will be on there talking Last Night in Soho. But really the best place to find my newsletter, Criticisms, which really kicked into high gear in October. I think I published more pieces there than I had published in a long time. I think I did 3 a week on old movies and new movies, and that's continuing. This week I have a full review of Pig. I have thoughts on Singing in the Rain as a movie I am thankful for. And then when this comes out on Friday, I am starting a series called Franchise Fridays, where every week I'll be breaking down a movie from a beloved franchise. I almost said French fries. I'll be breaking down a
Eat
movie
French fries while doing it. That's what you should do.
Usually I'm trying to kind of land that along the release of a new movie in the franchise. So unfortunately, that means this month I'm starting high with Ghostbusters, and then we're going into the Ghostbusters sequels and remakes, and might not be as fun after that. But yeah, I mean, there's a Ghostbusters piece on there right now that I quite like, and I still quite like Ghostbusters. So read that and give me a subscription if you're so inclined. It's free. You were kind of shaking your head at Ghostbusters.
No, it's a weird, like it is a. I don't think Ghostbusters is good. I love it.
That is exactly what I said. Like Ghostbusters is a movie that is not about anything. It's
really funny.
Work.
It's still really funny.
It is. Yeah. All
but
right.
It's yeah.
And that's why the sequels don't work. But for more of that, subscribe to Criticisms. There's some good stuff coming there. We'll be back in a few weeks. We will talk MASH. We will get into Robert Altman. I promise that it's coming, and I am looking forward to it. We'll see you in a few weeks.